Welcome to the podcast hosted by timecam.com on how to stay on top of your work.
Welcome back to Stay on Top of Your Work podcast. This is Kate, and here we talk about management, leadership, and productivity. And today my guest is Jamy Bechler, and he's the host of the Success is a Choice podcast. He's also a professional speaker and John Maxwell leadership coach who works with NBA, college, HS, and business teams to develop leadership and culture. Jamy was a college basketball coach for nearly 20 years, and he's also the author of the Leadership Playbook, Become Your Team's Most Valuable Leader. You can connect him with a Twitter, Coach Bechler, and by visiting his website at jamybechler.com. Thank you, Jamy, for coming here. It's my pleasure to have you here today.
Okay, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So my first question will be, who are you and what do you do? Can you tell us your story in short?
Yeah, who am I? No, I was, like you said, I mentioned in the introduction, I was a college basketball coach for 20 years and athletic director. So I was around college athletics. I've been around athletics all my life, and then I made the transition 2 years ago full time to be a full-time leadership trainer and speaker. And I've written a couple books. I started a podcast last October. And so pretty much my passion is just helping people maximize their potential, maximize their success, and helping people be better. And so, I try to draw from my experiences, both as a player, a coach, an athletic director, and then my work with businesses, sports teams, from high school on up to the professional ranks.
Okay, so you're the host of a podcast, Success is a Choice. How did you manage to achieve success as a coach, as a leader, as a speaker? What's the secret behind it? And how do you define success?
Yeah. Well, first of all, defining success, I really think success is being the best that you're capable of becoming. And I know that that's kind of a cop-out answer in a way, because what does that look like for everybody? But I do think it's different for everybody because, I mean, you can give your all in something and give 100% effort or as close to that, and you're more of a success, even though the results might not be there, as of someone that's just, lollygagging and going through the motions and not realizing their potential, but they just have more God-given talent to begin with, whether that's on the basketball court, a football field, soccer pitch, or, in a corporate office, in a boardroom. And so what I try to do is I try to help people understand, what is their potential? What can they do? And are they giving the effort? Are they doing what they can do to start off with? And then we try to, if the results aren't coming, what can we do to help you tweak your process? And as a coach, so I had some years where we were not very good. I was that coach that everybody thought should get fired, or I was that coach that everyone shook their head and thought, wow, that person's an idiot. They don't know what they're doing. And I knew exactly what I was doing. I just was doing it wrong, or I wasn't examining every possibility, or I let my ego get in the way, because as a coach, you're smarter than everybody else. That doesn't mean you're always right. And so, I started to become more successful as a coach once I realized that it's not about me, and it's not about me being smarter than everybody else. It's about our players and the people that I'm influencing, and how can I then help them be the best that they can be. So when I stopped, trying to be the best coach and out coach everybody and get a promotion or get more money, and started realizing, hey, I'm going to help these kids have a great experience, that's when we started to do well. And it's amazing how that happens. It's amazing how when we start looking at other people and helping other people, that we actually meet our goals at the same time.
Okay, so what I'm thinking about is being a coach and being a leader in a company. Do you see any differences, any similarities between working as a coach of a basketball team, for example, and working as a leader? Does it translate into that somehow, or you think there are no differences? How can we maybe benefit from or learn from coaches actually as leaders?
Yeah, great questions there. A great thought process, Kate. I think coaches need to be more like CEOs, more like business people sometimes, and business people need to be more like coaches sometimes. Uh, Essentially, a coach is just someone who takes somebody from where they're at to where they need to be. So, you have life coaches, you have business coaches, you have sports coaches. They're all the same in that they're trying to help people go to where those people can't get to on their own. The same way, in the Olympics, Michael Phelps, the greatest swimmer ever, he had a coach. Usain Bolt, the greatest runner ever, has a coach. All these people have a coach. Well, their coach can't swim faster than Michael Phelps, and the track coach can't run faster than Usain Bolt. You don't have to be better than the person you're coaching, but everybody needs a coach because we can't see the picture when we're inside the frame. So like when we're in the big forest, we can't see the whole forest. We just see a couple trees that are close to us. So we need someone to see that bigger picture. And so in coaching, whether you're an athletic coach or you're in business as a CEO, a manager, what you're trying to do is take people from where they are to where they need to be. Now, are there some differences? There are some differences because an athletic coach, they're going to be judged on a lot more things. They're going to be judged on winning and losing, but they're also going to be judged on, do their kids graduate? Are their kids, good kids? Are they representing the team and the community? Are they doing good things? Are they, those kind of things? Do they have good sportsmanship? In a business, you're mainly judged by that bottom line. Are you profitable? For the most part. Now, I think that there's different ways to get to profitability, and that's where maybe I teach things a little bit differently than other business coaches, in that I think that if you have great employee satisfaction, if your employees love coming to work, if they enjoy what they do, if you make the environment and the culture good, then you're going to have less turnover. You're going to have people that come to work and they're going to be more motivated and inspired each day. And eventually you're going to have more profits down the road. Or you may not have more revenue, but you'll have less expenses, meaning you'll have less people turning over and your HR department will like you because now all of a sudden they're not having to spend so much money on finding new employees. You're not training as many new employees. And so I think if you have a good culture, you're going to have better profitability at the end of the day. So I do think that there's a lot more similarities than differences, but there are a few differences in that businesses are more geared toward profitability and revenue and bottom line, whereas coaches aren't judged solely on wins and losses, though it would seem like it is. But sometimes, take a junior coach or a little league coach, they're not getting fired if they lose, if the kids are having a good experience and they're learning sportsmanship and learning some fundamentals.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm thinking about is how to create a good culture that like to come to work and respect everybody and each other and treat everybody equally. How to do that?
Yeah, another great question, Kate. The way you have a great culture is you have to intentionally want to have a great culture. Every business, you working there at Time Camp, anyone listening to this, working in any organization, your business, your team has a culture already. You already have a culture. The question is it the culture that you want, or is it the culture that you're allowing? Because we're going to get whatever we either emphasize or we allow. And so too many businesses or organizations or teams, they allow a negative or a bad culture to infect their employees, to infect the way that they do business. And so the very first thing you have to do is just decide, hey, I want to be intentional about this. I want to actually have a good culture. I don't want it to just happen. And good cultures don't just happen by accident. They have to be intentional. And so, you have to decide you want to be intentional, and then you have to decide, what are our core values? What are the things that are most important to us? Because you're going to get what you emphasize. And then everything from then on stems from that, your decision to have a good culture, and then what your core values are. And I really don't care what your core values are for the most part. Like if you say, all right, we're going to have 3 core values, and man, we just can't decide what these core values are going to be. Are these 3 things going to be really good? You know what? They're probably going to be good enough. They're probably going to be good. You don't have to bang your head against the wall trying to find the perfect things, but what's important to you. And then when you hire people, then in your day-to-day life, those things are going to come back into play constantly. You're going to live those out. So it's not just putting up a sign. If you're a basketball coach, it's not just putting up a sign in the locker room, with your core values and leaving it that. It's every interaction you have with your players. You are emphasizing those things as a owner, as a business person. What do you do? How do you greet your secretary? How do you greet your assistant when you walk in that door in the morning? Because that creates more culture than you sending out a memo or an email or putting up some fancy sign.
Right.
If I come in and I greet the secretary in a harsh way, or I'm just short with her, or, whatever, I'm grumpy. She might tend to be grumpy. Then she might feed off of me. And then when she interacts with 200 people that day, whether it's in face-to-face or on the phone, that's sending off more of a vibe of our environment, our atmosphere, our culture than any sign that I put up in the office. And so, how we live that out daily, but finding the right people, right team members around you is crucial, because the leader of your organization, whether it's a basketball coach or whether it's a CEO, they're going to set that vision. They're going to say, this is what we want the culture to be. All right. Mm-hmm. But the workers, the employees, the team members are going to be the ones that actually carry it out. The leader is positioning people to have a chance to carry it out in the right way, but the employees are actually going to carry out that culture. So when I walk into your business, anyone listening to this, if I walked into your business, I'm probably not meeting with the CEO all the time. But I'm probably going to meet other employees. Every employee I meet, it's going to give me a little clue about what their culture is, whether it's a negative culture, whether it's a cutthroat culture, whether it's a country club culture where everyone's just laid back and they don't care about anything. It's just fun, whatever, or, whether it's a competitive culture. No matter what that culture is, I'm going to know that by interacting with those employees. And so, those are a few things about culture.
Wow, fantastic. So what I'm also thinking about is when you are talking about employees, I think you partially actually create a good brand with the help of your team. So culture is like the basis of that. It's the fundament. But maybe there's something else.
Yeah, you have to have the culture, but what you want to do, a great leader, and this is where I think some people sometimes not necessarily mess up, but have a different perspective. I have a good leader, I don't think, should be creating really good followers. I think a good leader should be creating other leaders. So what I'm trying to do as the manager, supervisor, CEO, the leader with position, with authority, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to develop, Kate. I'm trying to develop Kate so that she can lead the people around her, no matter what her position is, that she can lead herself first, which means you're going to do what you're supposed to do. You're going to be inspired. You're going to be motivated positively, but then you're going to influence the people around you. And then all of a sudden in your corporation, now this doesn't happen overnight, but in your company, your corporation, all of a sudden after some extended period of time, what you're going to end up having is you're going to have all these little pockets of leaders and these pockets of people doing what they're supposed to do, being inspired, even if the leader, the CEO is not around, because that's what you really want to do, and look at it as a basketball coach. When I was a coach, I knew that we had kids in the back of the bus that were either being positive or negative toward other players or myself. I knew that they were in the locker room. I knew that they were in the dorm rooms, the cafeteria, and what they were going to talk about when they were in little groups was actually going to go farther to helping us have a better culture than anything I could say at practice, because that was going to be real and true in their lives. That was they were going to internalize those values. And so, you have workers at the water cooler, workers in the break room, workers just hanging out at lunchtime. What are they saying? And so what you want to do as a leader with some authority, with some position, is you want to create other leaders so that they're able to then make sure that your company is going in the right direction, and that if there is negativity, that they're trying to squash that a little bit. because, none of us want to go to work and be told what to do. And we're all underpaid, no matter how much we're making. We can make $5 million a year and we're still underpaid in our minds at some point. At some point, we have to be inspired to do our jobs. And if we feel like there's purpose to it, if we feel like people are going to appreciate what we're doing, if we feel like we're being equipped to do our jobs the right way, then we're probably going to have a little better attitude toward that. So as a leader, you should be looking for ways to equip your people, to empower them, to encourage them, to add value to them whenever possible. Find out what they want, connect with them enough so that you know what your employees want. If I'm your boss, Kate, I want to know, what are your hopes and dreams? What do you want? Why are you working here? Are you just working here for a paycheck? Are you working here because you believe in the mission of the company? You believe in a higher mission? Are you just working because you believe in one person? Or, what is it that makes you tick? And I need to find that out about my employees. Now, if you have a company where you have 1,000 employees, you may not be able to know every one of them, but that's where you have to develop people that are direct reports to you. So, let's say you're the president and you have 4 vice presidents. Well, then you have to train those vice presidents so that they're just an extension of you, so that within their department, they're going out and they're creating leaders within their department, because you're not going to be able to touch everybody if you have 1,000 employees, let's say. So you always have to try to create more leaders so that they can create more leaders. And so eventually you have a ripple effect and your whole culture is great.
Okay, and that leads me actually to another question, which you also answered in some part. What are the skills that a good leader should have, or maybe who shouldn't be a leader, and how to know if you are good for this?
Yeah, another great question, Kate. I think here's my philosophy on leadership. And it doesn't change whether we're dealing with a nonprofit, a for-profit company, or a sports team. I believe everybody can be a leader. Now, not everybody's going to have a position of leadership, but everybody can be a leader, because I believe leadership really is just about one life influencing another, one person influencing another. So let's say there's, you have friends, there's 3 of you or 4 of you that want to go to a movie or want to go out to eat. Somehow you're going to have to decide what movie you're going to. Somehow you're going to have to decide who's driving, who's sitting in the front seat, who's sitting in the back seat. You have to decide what restaurant you're going. And none of you might be the boss. None of you might be old. You might all be the same age or come from the same background or whatever. But you're all going to be leaders at some point. And one of you might be influencing the others about what movie. One of you might be influencing, because you have the car. So you're going to be the one that's driving. But you influence people every day, and your influence is going to depend on your credibility. Do people know, like, and trust you? And if people don't know, like, and trust you, then you're not going to have as strong of an influence. Therefore, you're not going to be as good of a leader. So when you ask about qualities of a leader, I think that they're the typical, have respect for others, have respect for yourself, have responsibility, be somebody that takes responsibility for their actions. That doesn't mean that you take the blame for things. Taking responsibility is different than pointing fingers. Whose fault is it taking the blame? It's saying, all right, all this, we have to move forward. We have to find a solution, being solution focused as opposed to problem fixated. And so, I think leaders, you have to respect other people, and everybody can do that. I mean, when I work with sports teams or I work with businesses, I'll start by asking, what are the qualities of a leader? Just like you asked me. And I'll get loyalty, trust, hard work, resiliency, responsibility. I'll get those things. Well, I never get an answer that is just exclusive to the CEO. Mm-hmm. The CEO, whoever's in charge of that group, they're not the only one that can have those qualities. Anybody in that room could have those qualities. So therefore, anyone can be a leader. Now, not everybody's going to have a position, high up on that flow chart or high up on some organizational chart, but everybody can be a leader because everybody can influence somebody. And I heard it all the time dealing with sports teams, but I also hear it in corporations. Well, I can't change the company. I can't change the team. The team won't listen to me. Oh, the company's going to do what the company's going to do. Well, yeah, the company will, but what about your 2 or 3 closest friends, that you go to break with, that you go to lunch with? You can change their mindset. You can help them be more positive. You can help them do their job better. You can encourage them more, so that you 2 and 3 people are going to enjoy your job better. And then that might spread. It might be contagious. And there was actually a study done at Harvard a few years ago about physiology, our kind of the vibe that we send off. And it was shown that we can actually influence people up to 10 feet away with our physiologically. Essentially, if our attitude is good and we're very enthusiastic, we're very happy, joyful, whatever it is, we can actually influence to some degree other people and their feelings. And so essentially we need to think, every day, are we going to be like a big dose of vitamin C, or are we going to be a germ?
Right.
How are we contagious? Are we contagious in a good or a bad way? And we can do that. And so when you ask about qualities of a leader, I certainly think the responsibility, respect, um, those kind of things are important, but also our enthusiasm and how we influence people for the better, and how are we positive? Because I think too many people are negative. And we see that if you're on social media, certainly if you're ever on social media, which most of us are, we see so much negativity there. And we see so many where we point out problems, but we don't offer legitimate solutions. We just complain to complain. And I think the world needs some more positive leaders, and our businesses need more positive leaders. And that doesn't just mean the CEO. That means me. Like Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. I mean, that begins with me at the water cooler. Am I
Exactly.
complaining, or am I going to be positive?
Right. And I'm also thinking about being a champion. Um, because you wrote a book, Building Champions, Success Principles from A to Z. Um, and you wrote about some principles there, how to be successful. So I'm thinking about how to be a champion in our life, in our work. How can we do this?
Yeah, the book, 26 chapters, each a letter. A is for attitude, B is for belief, C is for courage, and so on and so forth. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to put some of those qualities, like you just asked, what are some qualities of a leader? Well, what are some qualities that we need to be more successful in life? And so, like we put different characteristics in there, and then we have stories in there. So it's a quick read, it's a pretty easy read in the book. But essentially, being a champion just means overcoming obstacles, being the best that you can be. And some of us are going to like raise a trophy one day, and some of us may never raise a trophy or get a first place medal, but we can still be a champion, because it goes back to what you asked: what's success mean? Well, I think success is just doing the best that you can all the time, being consistent with that. And it, how do you be a champion in life? Well, you be a champion in life by doing what you need to do when you need to do it, as well as you possibly can do it, and do it that way all the time. You're being consistent in reaching your potential, whatever that potential is. If I mean, I was a pretty good athlete, but I was born 5'11". Well, I was born much shorter than that, but I eventually grew to be 5'11". And I wasn't a real tall guy, so my upside in basketball was limited. That doesn't mean that I couldn't make the pro level, but it did mean that I was a little bit, the odds were against me to start with. But that didn't mean that I couldn't achieve that. But what it meant was I need to do whatever I can do at my height, at my weight, at my athletic ability. And I can't look and say, well, I'm not this tall. I mean, my brother's much taller than me, and he wasn't athletic at all. And I could sit here and be a victim and say, well, that's not fair. That's not fair. But the reality is I need to do whatever I can do to meet my potential. And so, yeah, we wrote that book hoping that people would read the different chapters, and they might, something might resonate with them. One of the chapters is on resiliency. What do you do when you have a setback? What do you do when, things aren't going well, and you have a challenge, and maybe you don't overcome that challenge? You fail.
Mhm.
How do you fail forward? How do you move on? How do you use a setback, and it's really just a setup for a comeback? how do you do that? And we put some examples in there of people doing that. And I think that's important because life is all about, life is going to be filled with disappointments, frustrations, setbacks, adversity. And, I think that William Shakespeare, I love a quote he had. I can't tell you most of his plays, even though I know they're famous, but William Shakespeare had a quote that said, "Sweet are the uses of adversity." And when adversity comes, there are so many ways that you can use adversity, either as fuel, motivation. You can learn from adversity. Other people can learn from your adversity. You can be a role model. You can be an inspiration to others by overcoming some of that stuff. Sometimes it knocks you down a peg or two, so you don't have as much pride anymore. You don't think that you're hot stuff. And sometimes we need that in our lives as well to fully realize our potential.
Exactly. So you wrote another book, The Leadership Playbook, Become Your Team's Most Valuable Leader. Do you want to comment on that? What is the book about? Why should we read it?
Yeah, you should read it. It's primarily designed for student athletes or for students, but the same principles apply to any team, whether it's a business team or not. But it's primarily focused for sports teams, and it was. That's what I deal with. That's the people I deal with the most is sports teams, whether it's I've dealt with high school teams, college teams, and even teams in the NBA, professional basketball. And they all have the same issues. The players all have same issues. Coaches all have the same issues. And so I wrote this book to try to help them understand what being a leader is and how they can be a better teammate. How do they fit in to the greater good of the team? You have this team of 15 people, 20 people, 50, 100 people, 1,000 people, whatever your team, whatever your organization is, you have people that you're trying to fit into different roles and trying to get them all to use their talents for the good of the team or the organization. So how does a coach do that best? But how do the players do that? How do the team members do that? And it's tough because, when you and I go to work, we sometimes lose sight of what that work really is. And does it matter? Do I matter? What's my role? Oh, I wish I had a bigger role. I wish I was promoted, and I come at it from the context of sports, obviously. But if you're not the star player, well, what can you still do to make your team be a champion or to raise that trophy at the end or to maximize their potential? I played on a team once that we were predicted to be last, and we ended up far exceeding expectations. We might not have raised a trophy, but we far exceeded expectations and earned a lot of respect. We were champions, even though we didn't raise a trophy. We were successful, but we had a lot of members of that team who were devoted to each other, not to our own selfish agendas or our own desires and goals. We were devoted to one another. We enjoyed one another. We trusted one another. We connected with one another. And therefore, the team was much better. Individually, we were not a good team. But collectively together, we were able to achieve much more than we could. And a lot of organizations, most organizations aren't going to be Google or Microsoft or Amazon, but you can learn the principles from those organizations and you can strive to be the best in your own industry, strive to be the best that you're capable of becoming. Amazon wasn't Amazon when they started off. Google wasn't Google when they started off. But through their culture, they grew. And not everybody's destined to be those kind of companies, but that sum of your parts, you always want it to be greater than the individual parts if you can. And so that's a long-winded answer. That's what that book is about. How can you be a better teammate and what can coaches or leaders do to help their team members be better?
Okay, it basically looks like you have learned so much from working with teams and as being a coach. Is there anything else that you've learned and you think is useful to our audience?
Well, my podcast called Success is a Choice, and you mentioned that a couple times. I appreciate that. I've used that slogan for a lot of years. And unfortunately, I stole that slogan. It was a book title years and years ago when I first started off as a coach. Another basketball coach had that as a book title, and I thought it was great. And I used that with all my teams. And then when I was looking to do a podcast, I thought it was a natural to use that, because everything in life is a choice. And what we do today will impact us and affect us tomorrow. And who we are right now is because of all the choices we made leading up to today. And so success is a choice, but so is failure. But that's not as cool. Maybe that is a better title. Failure is a choice, but I wanted to go with success as a choice because we like to stay positive. But what I've learned through my years of coaching, my own experiences from doing this podcast, is that people aren't perfect. People screw up, and we see that all the time. It's how they handle that, like we talked about earlier, that adversity. But people are going to mess up. You're going to mess up. It doesn't mean you're a failure at life. It means you just stumbled at that one thing. I've also learned that there's different ways to get to success. What might have worked for you, I can learn from, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily going to work for me. And what worked for me may not work for somebody else necessarily exactly, but the principles are going to remain the same. You ask, what are the qualities of a leader? Those are almost the same as the qualities of a successful person. Are you going to work hard? Are you going to have resiliency? Are you going to be loyal to other people? Almost everybody works with somebody at some point. So are you going to be loyal to people? Are you going to be trustworthy? And those are the kinds of things that are going to help you be successful. And that's what I've learned from a lot of people that I've come in contact with.
Right. So I want to ask you, what inspires you in your work, and what books do you read?
Yeah. What inspires me is I see, when I get on social media, when I watch the news, when I talk to people, every time they're negative about stuff, every time I see negativity, that inspires me. Now, sometimes it might frustrate me because I'm like, oh, why can't these people just get along? Or why can't these people, be positive about stuff? Try to find solutions instead of just complaining all the time. It might frustrate me, for a minute or two, but that inspires me to keep doing my work. That inspires me to keep trying to reach people. And a lot of people get frustrated because, oh, I want to change the world, or I want to change my community, or this or that. Well, sometimes you just got to start. I want to change myself. I want to change my mindset, my heart. And then I want to change the people closest to me. I can't change the world if the people in my own household are being negative and I can't even help influence them and inspire them. How am I going to inspire the world to change? So I think it begins one person at a time. You can't change everybody and you can't change everything, but you can do something and you can help change somebody, help influence somebody. So that inspires me to keep going, to try to make the world a better place, one person at a time. The books I read a lot of John Maxwell books, and I read a lot of John Gordon books. John Gordon writes a lot of parables, fables, and he's big in the sports area. And John Maxwell's written over 100 leadership books. So I read a lot of those two. Those are the main ones, but I read a lot of leadership and business books. So whatever can help me. I just got a new collection of about 10 books in from Amazon just 2 weeks ago. So I was excited about that, my summer reading. So I've been doing that. And every time I get on the treadmill or the elliptical or the exercise bike, I try to read during that time. That's my time to read. So it takes my mind off of how bad the stuff is that I'm doing and how out of shape I am when I get on that exercise bike. So I just read all this positive leadership stuff and it takes my mind off the actual exercise.
Okay, that's great. So I have two last questions. The first one is, what advice would you give to young people who want to be leaders? Because I think it's really difficult sometimes for those who enter the world of leadership or coaching to know, to thrive, to achieve success. So what advice would you give to such people?
Yeah, be patient. Be patient. Don't expect to be a leader right away or have a position of leadership. Don't expect to be successful in the world's eyes right away. Pay your dues. Be patient. That's one of the biggest things I think with young people is that they're not patient. They think that if I'm an entrepreneur, that I need to have $1 million company within a year. Well, sometimes it takes 15 years to be an overnight success. Sometimes
Yeah.
people see, oh, well, that person made it. Yeah, but you didn't see all the stuff that went in behind the scenes. So work your tail off, be industrious, be the hardest worker out there, and then be patient. Yeah, obviously you have to have a good plan. You just can't work hard without a good plan, because then you'll just be spinning your wheels, or it'll be like me on a treadmill. You might be running hard, but you're not getting anywhere.
Right.
Um, but definitely too many people think that they should be successful right away, in terms of money or power or position. And that's not always the case. And the things we see people achieving, it took them a while to get to that point.
Exactly. Things need time to, to work out. So my last question is connected with the name of the podcast, Stay on Top of Your Work. How do you stay on top of your work, and how do you manage your time?
Yeah, that has been honestly a struggle for me, to a degree, and I don't think I'm alone in that. I take solace in that other people have the same issue, or else you wouldn't have this podcast and you wouldn't ask that
Exactly.
question.
Yes.
It goes back to what I said about culture. You have to be intentional. You have to be intentional about your time, and whether or not you're talking about Jamy Bechler, you're talking about Bill Gates. We all have the same amount of time in our day. Now, Bill Gates has a little bit more money than I do, just a little bit, but we both have the same amount of time. And so how we manage our time says, number one, a lot about our priorities, but it also says a lot about our discipline, our choices in life, and what we want out of life. And I'm never going to have Bill Gates' money, but I can on a much smaller scale, I can have an impact like Bill Gates if I can get my time right. And so what I do is I try to schedule what are the 2 or 3 most important things each day that I have to do. So, essentially, most of us love to-do lists, and we have these long to-do lists, and we get frustrated because we have 35 things on this to-do list. And we sometimes just cross off things, or we do the easy things to cross it off, and we never really get anywhere. We never really accomplish what we need to do. And I read this book a few years ago called The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And whether or not everything in there is practical or not, or is realistic in all of our situations, the premise, I think we can learn a lot from it. And one of the things he said in that book was, look at your life, and essentially, if you only had, 4 hours in your day, let's say, and what would be the only thing that you would do that day, essentially. And he goes into it. He says it a lot more eloquently than I can, but essentially, if you only had a couple hours in your day to get anything done, what would you do? What's that 1 or 2 thing that you would do? Essentially fit it on a Post-it note. And a lot of us like Post-it notes, and we'll have 30 Post-it notes around our office. But essentially, if you only had one Post-it note and this is the only thing you could get done today, what would it be? And I kind of do that. I say, this is what I'm going to do today. And if I get done with that, then great, I can move on to this long-term to-do list that I have over in the corner. But I'm not touching that necessarily. I want to do each day what I need to do that day, what's most important. And I think it goes into a bigger thing, is that life is too short to be doing mundane things. And I think you need to make sure that you're spending time with your family, spending time with what's most important, and in your business, what is most important. We could always do another tweet or another post on social media. We could always make another call. We could always send another note. We could always add to a database or a spreadsheet. We could all do more of that. Is that really important? And for some of us, it might be very important, but we have to decide in our own lives what's the most important thing and make sure we're getting that done each day. And I don't know if that's a great strategy that you're looking for, but from a philosophical standpoint, that's helped me. And there's ways you can do that. I'm looking right now at a dry erase board. I have a dry erase board that has like just 2 or 3 things about today, what I have to do today. And then I have something for this week, and I have something for this month. And those are much longer. And I might move them over to today if I get something done, or if I get my things done, I cross them off or I erase them from the dry erase board. I'll look at this week and say, all right, well, what can I do now? Or, you know what, let's go to the beach, or let's go for a walk, or, hey, we're going to call the day off. I did what I needed to do today, and everybody's going to be a little different with that. But I think we need to prioritize a little bit more and cut down our to-do list from the 30 things to just a couple things. What are the most important things we have to do today?
And that's a perfect answer. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jamy, for being my guest. It was a pleasure to talk to you. It was really inspiring. Thank you so much.
This podcast was brought to you by Timecam. You can listen to it on iTunes and SoundCloud. Subscribe to get more content and always stay on top of your work.